Wayne Hills, and welcome to the Student Voice. I'm your host, Halima Gaber, and today we have a very special guest. Today we have the honor of speaking with Mr. Cittadino, the superintendent of the Wayne Public Schools District. How are you today, Mr. Cittadino?
I'm doing great. It's great to be here at Wayne Hills High School.
That's great. Thank you so much for joining us today. Let's get started. Mr. Cittadino, we heard that you love dogs. Can you tell us a little bit about yours?
Sure. I've always been a dog lover. I think if I mathematically look at my 57 years of life, maybe there's been 3 or 4 years in which I didn't have a dog. But currently I have 3 dogs in my household. I have Daisy, which many of you have met, who comes with me most days to work. She's a yellow Labrador. I have Brandy, who is a golden retriever. And my newest addition to the pack is Ripley. She's a black Labrador.
Can you tell us about your past work experiences?
Sure. I began in education in 1997. I started as a middle school teacher in Elizabeth, New Jersey. I stayed in the classroom for probably about 6 years or so. Then I spent the next 2 years being a disciplinarian within the schools there. From there, I interviewed and I was given an opportunity to be a vice principal in Old Bridge, New Jersey at a middle school level. And I was only there as the vice principal for a few months, and the principal retired. And I was happy to be able to be interviewed, and decided that they chose me as the principal for that school. And I stayed at that school as a principal for like another 7 years, became the high school principal for a year, and then the assistant superintendent in Old Bridge for 1 year, and then the superintendent for another 12 years, so almost 20 years there in Old Bridge before finding myself here in Wayne.
What made you decide to come to Wayne Schools District?
You know, I was looking for some new challenges, and I was looking for a school district that could use my skill set as well. Old Bridge had a similar amount of students, about 8,000 students, 1 high school, 2 middle schools, 11 elementary schools. So similarities there, but I was intrigued by the 2 high school system here, and wanted to be part of that. I grew up in Bergen County, so I knew of Wayne schools, and there's a lot of value that this community has that matches with my core values. One of that is to be very family-oriented, and to be a town that values patriotism and has the values I was looking for, as even you know the value of education and how it can transform one's life. So I was really excited about that, and looked to make the challenges that were here in Wayne my own.
We were able to have Brooks Goodstack ask a question about the rumors that New Jersey high school and elementary school students would switch times.
There were rumors that high school and elementary school starting times would swap. Why didn't that happen yet?
So why hasn't happened, I think, was Brooks' question. And I think there's a lot of challenges to making such a switch. One, that a district of this size relies upon a 3-tier system of transportation, meaning that there is a time for when high school students starts, a time for when middle school students start, and then elementary students, and then as well as that you have the pre-K. If you did them all at once, you would need a massive transportation system, and that's the reason why you have 3 tiers, so you can do different routes at different times. So then you look at the challenge if you transpose that and you have the elementary students coming in first, because some people say, well, younger kids get up earlier, they go to sleep earlier, that would make sense. But if you look around and ask your friends, how many of your friends also provide support for the younger students when they get home from school as well? When I've spoken to parents of that there was a large percentage in which that's the case, where mom and dad may be at work and rely upon the high school age student, at least in the beginning, to care for their younger siblings when they're getting home. If the elementary students were getting home first, that would cause some other challenges as well. So those are some of the things you have to look at, but it really is a community-based decision, and you have to look at communities and what their needs are. And I think that many districts haven't made that change yet because it doesn't fit the needs within the community and their families.
Makes sense. Students are always complaining about snow days. What factors go into the decision to close school?
You know what? We, as superintendents, we just spin a wheel in the middle of the night, decide whether we want to have a snow day or not. But really, there's a lot of factors. One is, paramount for everything that I do as a superintendent, it's the safety of my students and my staff. And that has to be at the focus of it. Another thing is the timing. New Jersey seems to have the timing that storms always begin around 6 a.m. To 10 a.m. in the morning. A dream for a superintendent is to have one that began the night before 10 p.m. and you knew that you're going to have a significant snowfall, so that we can alert parents early and get the planning in place that there'd be a snow day. That doesn't seem to happen in New Jersey very often. So it usually has us up as superintendents around 4 a.m. Looking at weather systems, looking at any resources we have, talking to each other as other superintendents. And making those key decisions. We want to make sure that our students have the supervision they're going to need at home if they're home for the day, and we don't make those decisions lightly. And then when it does snow, you'll have some families might say, "Yeah, snow is not that bad in front of my house. I think we could have gone to school." But you have other areas of this town. It's a very diverse community, Wayne. Such was my previous district as well, where you have some parts of the town where the roads are very narrow, and you have to get plows down there, and you have to get school buses down there. Now, couple that with cars parking on the sides of the streets on the same day of a snow event and the plowing, and you have a very difficult time for students to be able to walk, especially if there's no sidewalk, and having the school buses go down there. Most people don't know that residents are responsible for clearing their sidewalks and all their corners if they live on a corner. You have to make sure that when students are out there on a corner waiting for a school bus, that they have a place to stand. You don't want them standing in the street. So you want to give enough time for the residents to clear what they're responsible for. So those are all the things, the factors that take into effect when you have a snow day. But I rest assure you that as a superintendent, we don't really sleep the night before.
Got it. Those were some great questions so far. When we return, we will be focusing on Wayne Hills and the superintendent's vision for our school. We'll be right back. During the last few months of school last year, a lot of classes, such as English or math, become unbearable because of the heat. Obviously, with the financial problems, this is a tough issue, but is there a chance that we will be getting better air conditioning in the school in the future?
I know a lot of communities weigh that, and it's one of my goals for this district moving forward, looking at its infrastructure. A lot of the buildings here are built in the 50s, 60s, and as such, air conditioning wasn't as much of a priority back then. And I know as myself, as a teacher, I taught on the third floor in Elizabeth without air conditioning. It was unbearable. And so I know it's not easy, and we want to make sure that. But you look at the investment of it, and it's really an investment that really only impacts maybe 2.5 months of the entirety of the time you're in school. June, the first few weeks of September, and we had a great start to this year. So the climate was very good to us this year. Sometimes even a little bit of May. So maybe even less than that time period to make this investment. And I know when I've looked at it for a similar sized district in the past, that just air conditioning the second floor of 11 elementary schools at that time, and we're talking back quite a few years, it was over $30 million. Think of that now, how the cost of labor has gone up, the cost of materials have gone up over the past 5 years. So we would have to do really in-depth exploration as to what those costs would be, how to finance those costs, and really look at the long-term infrastructure of the schools to do so.
Emmy Goodstat had a question and was wondering about it. Let's see what her question was.
There were rumors that there were going to be updates to our football field, especially the bleachers. Is that true?
Well, I know this concern was brought to my attention, especially the bleachers. And again, that's going to have to be something that we put ours over a long-term facilities plan. As I said earlier, safety is always a priority for myself and the students that I serve. So definitely something we want to look at and look to see, is there a way, do they need an upgrade? Do they need some repair to make them safer? Definitely going to be something we'll look at. I think, from when I saw the fields, I've been on both football fields, seen some really exciting games, and the fields look very good. I know there's a cycle in which we have to replace turf. I'm not aware yet that where our cycle life is on those turfs or fields right now, but the real priority would definitely be, looking for a future with the bleachers.
Thank you, Emmy, for that question, and thank you, Mr. Cittadino, for that answer. Next up, we will be asking Mr. Cittadino questions about Wayne overall. We've been seeing articles about how the town has been in debt, and we've seen this play out in the cutting of programs and teachers no longer in the district. Students are concerned that these losses may happen again this year. Knowing you can't get into specifics, how is the district gonna avoid this issue?
Well, I think the interesting thing about that is, this is an area in which I've had a lot of experience. And it really comes down to not the district being in debt, but a funding formula that comes out of Trenton, the Department of Education, and our state government that really is, it's not sustainable. Years back, our governor imposed a 2% cap on revenue, which schools could count on to support their schools. And school districts, I think most people would know this, only have one source of revenue, and that's through taxes of the local taxpayer. And an arbitrary number of 2% was placed upon all schools across New Jersey, just to try to put a cap on the amount that local taxpayers were paying in taxes. When I've asked legislators about that 2%, what's the mathematical reasoning behind a 2% cap? There's no algorithm or math to it that they could come up with, just that it seemed to be a comfortable number at the time. Now, you move years ahead in which we see expenses. So if you can only have 2% revenue coming in, but you see expenses such as environmental expenses, through utilities, gas, electricity, transportation costs to fuel our fleet, and having transportation routes that have only gone up. The increases in out-of-district tuition for our students that must go out of district to support their needs that have skyrocketed to anywhere from 25 to 55% increases. Local healthcare costs for our hardworking staff. This year, it could be up to a 31% increase. So you look at all these percentages I've just reviewed with you that have gone up 25, 30%, but we can only increase our income by 2%. The math doesn't math. It's something that I've said before, and I've spoken to state legislature about this. There is a fiscal cliff that all school districts will face, at least at some point, because you can't keep up with the expenses without having the ability to address those expenses. It's like in your household, if you have expenses that go up, you can either cut back on those expenses, is something we've looked to do, but when you do that, you really impact student programming, or you can increase your revenue, increase how much money you take in your household. Sometimes you get another job. Sometimes you take on other work. You work more hours. School districts can't do that. We can't increase our revenue. So those are some of the challenges. Looking forward, we look at fiscal responsibility. We look at ways in which we can address some of those concerns, because you can reduce program, but try not to reduce the impact on students. So you look at things like enrollment. Maybe the high school enrollment at Hills or Valley is a little less, so do you need as many sections of offerings of maybe an English or a history? So in those ways, you can do things responsibly. And maybe that staff, you use them where you can have increased areas of enrollment. So looking at a long-range projections for enrollment in the district, we'll see that we are expecting students' enrollments to go up, starting at the elementary schools, working its way through middle schools, and later on in the high schools. So we have to plan for that, but that's going to come down to us looking fiscally at the funding formula that definitely needs to change in Trenton, and us taking care of a few things locally.
For example, at Wayne Hills, we've lost 2 programs, robotics and CAD. Is there any chance that we will be able to get those two programs back in the future?
So when I looked at the start of what the loss of those programs was, it really came down to a staffing issue, not a fiscal issue. Robotics and CAD, and we're seeing this all across the nation, is a decrease in qualified applicants for teaching positions. Not as many people are going into the teaching field as they once were. That's why I'm encouraging everyone here to do so. So having staff members with those skill sets and certifications in CAD and robotics is very challenging. So that was the challenge there, that the positions were posted, we just couldn't find a qualified applicant for it. So if we're able to find a qualified applicant for it, we can budget for it and finance it and put that program back in place.
So since that there's a shortage of like teachers that are qualified for these programs, do you think that we're going to be losing more programs?
No, that's our job in human resources, and working with the WEA is to be competitive and try to attract more staff members. And it comes down to a longer term goal that I have, is to bring that sustainability and to the district.
We have another question from one of our seniors, Evelyn Cluley. Let's see what she has to say.
What is your opinion on the new phone policies, and how is the Wayne School District going about them?
Well, I think, looking at the phone policies, there's some studies that show that students do better, have less stress when they're away from their phones for that educational part of the day. I don't really know if yonder pouches are the way to do that, because it still creates that proximity of having it with me but not having access to it. It really comes down to getting back to norms of what norms would be, that having phones away but in your property, maybe in your locker, so forth, during the course of the academic day, so you can focus on that and then have access to it when you have free periods or at the end of the learning day, which would be much better than I think any programmers or so forth, or pouches to lock them away. It really comes down to self-control and doing what's best for you as a steward of your own education.
There has been a lot of building and construction in Wayne over the past couple of years. Are the schools expecting and prepared for significant amount of new enrollments?
So this board has done a very good job of planning for that and looking at a study. We have a recent study that we're getting the results from now that does indicate that we'll see an influx of students coming into our schools. And, that's something we have to be prepared for, and looking for a short-term plan, a long-term plan to address that. I think that there'll definitely be a need for added space within our schools for some of these students, especially as we take in more students at a lower level. So we have the pre-K students that are coming in, something that really didn't exist within public schools when these buildings were built in the 50s and 60s. So you have anywhere from 3-year-olds to 20-year-olds within the school, depending on the student programming. An additional factor that you have to take into place is that some of our programs that we have in place for our exceptional students didn't exist either in the schools when our schools were built. And you look at the capacity within each school. A lot of students with exceptional special needs programs would go out of district. Now, the real focus is having students in the least restrictive environment, which is having them in their home schools here within Wayne. And within those classrooms, you look at spaces that have students in them with maybe 12 students in it, paraprofessionals, and those classrooms used to have, anywhere up to 25, 26 students in it. So when you're repurposing those classrooms, what people say, well, the capacity of the enrollment is down, the capacity to have more students should be up. But that's not really true when you look into what 2025 offers all students of all abilities going forward. So yes, there's going to be challenges going forward with looking at some increased enrollment, but I'm sure we'll be ready for it.
Do you think Wayne Valley and Wayne Hills would ever combine programs or end up like merging together one day?
I don't know if I can say enough about that, having been here about a month, that's something that's going to happen anytime soon. I know we're going to look at a redistricting report from a provider that we have looking at the best way to incorporate our students into the schools. But I think that there will be some challenges, and I think there's some opportunities too. So like in a situation like you talked about before with CAD and robotics, and the limited number of students who maybe want that, is it better fiscal responsibility to have students from Wayne Valley and Wayne Hills attend the same classrooms, maybe virtually or in a real space, to get the same education, and allowing us to use our resources more globally across Wayne?
We also had some questions about the future. Where do you see the district in 5 years?
In 5 years, I think we're going to be in a really good place. Well, the goal for this year for me is to really make stronger connections with the community and families. I think I'm going to use that information that I gleaned from that, and also working with staff to really have a needs assessment of where we need to be within the next 5 years. And in there, I'm looking at the two major S words: sustainability and stability. I think we've gone through a period of time here where there's people concerned about the stability. There's a lot of changes in leadership and a lot of changes in staffing, trying to bring that stability back, having transparent conversations with community members, families, to really get to see where their needs are and where they see Wayne schools going forward, and using that information to create that, like I said, sustainability and stability over the next 5 years, with a better financial picture and a better infrastructure plan that allows for the increased level of students and to meet the needs of all our students that we have here presently.
Another thing that was talked about in the future was the 5th graders moving up to the middle schools and the 8th graders moving up to the high schools.
Mm-hmm.
Do you ever see this happening?
I don't know. I think that in itself would create some pretty big challenges in doing so. Like I said, we have the board, prior to my arrival, has hired an agency that will look at redistricting and look at a better way to meet the needs of our students within the schools. We're looking for the results of that report. Right now, that agency is in our schools, talking to leaders within the schools about how we use our capacity within our schools, how we utilize the classroom spaces, so they can come back to us with the full information. But like I said, that question would definitely create some challenges that we'd want to look at and make the right decision before rushing into any decision.
What new programs or initiatives are you planning to implement in the next 5 to 10 years?
Well, one of my big priorities is to make sure that every student who graduates from Wayne schools, and this is always my educational philosophy, is that my responsibility is to make you a self-reliant contributor to society. And to do so in education, you really have to be a visionary, and you have to have flexibility in knowing that the times change, and so do the needs change. Right now, we're at the challenge of providing you with, for careers that we don't even know exist yet, and that's always the great challenge in being a visionary in education. So right here, we're sitting in an amazing studio. We talked about a few seconds ago off air about podcast rooms. 10 years ago, not really many people knew what a podcast was, nor that it'd be a career. But you think of how many influencers are out there who have podcasts now, who are self-reliant and who do create employment for others. I think that's going to be the thing. So, one, I want to make every graduate of Wayne Schools to be a global citizen, because you're going to compete for jobs not just from people from the Wayne area and Passaic County, not just people from New Jersey, not just people in the United States. You're going to be competing for jobs with people from across the world. And what skill sets will you have that'll set you apart from them? Is it an expansion of the languages that we offer? Is it an expansion of our technology skills that we offer? Is it an expansion of just making people more empathetic and understanding of different cultures, so that when you are competing there, you have the upper hand? I think that's going to be a big part of the programs we look toward in the future. And, no doubt AI is going to be part of that, right? Because AI is going to, there's good sides of AI and there's bad sides of AI, but AI is here to stay. And it's definitely that artificial intelligence is going to be utilized to have an impact on many of the jobs that humans are doing now. But AI is no good without the humans who put that software and engineering together. So we're going to need people to even support AI. And I know that our Wayne students, when they leave here and they go out into careers and college, they're going to have the skill set to be at the forefront of that.
So would you say your biggest goal is building these skill sets up? Yeah,
definitely. My biggest goal is to have mechanisms and platforms for our students to get the skill sets they need to be competitive once they leave here, and to go on and have self-fulfilling lives, and they can take care of themselves, but also be happy.
What would you say you're most excited for about our school district?
Just getting really to know it well, and getting to know the people well, and getting to know the staff and the families well. I'm really engaged in community-based interactions. I've always liked that. I like being out there in the public, working with families and working with community members. So that's one of the things I'm really looking forward to here. In the short amount of time that I've been here, I made many connections, and I look forward to many more. The best way that I can serve you and Wayne is by getting to know the people better, and having that ability for people to interact with me and telling me what their needs are of me as I serve them.
Thank you so much, Mr. Cittadino, for taking the time to come to Wayne Hills to answer our questions. We really appreciate you sharing your insights with us. Is there advice you'd like to add with your... Okay, we're doing that. Okay. Thank you so much, Mr. Cittadino, for taking the time to come to Wayne Hills to answer our questions. We really appreciate you sharing your insights with us. Is there any advice that you'd like to leave with your students, or anything you'd like to add before we wrap up?
I think the most important advice I can give you is to take advantage of every opportunity. Take advantage of stepping outside your comfort zones. I know there is a desire for everyone, and I'm a victim of myself, to be on our phones looking at the latest information, the latest technology, the latest apps. But there has to be balance too. Take some time. Put the phone down. Take a walk outside, explore, get to know people that you haven't met before, and I think you'll have a very rich, fulfilling life when you have balance in it.
Thank you again for being here. We've learned a lot, and this was an honor to have this conversation with you.
Thank you. You did a great job, and it's my honor to be here as well.